The Atomic Real Estate Show, bringing you the real estate of real estate. Brought to you by Danny Bennett Productions in partnership with Direct Subs.
This episode is brought to you by Baker Street Partners. Baker Street Partners is a company that specializes in real estate development and restoration in Manayunk and Roxborough. The team is dedicated to enhancing the distinct character of our neighborhood. They have an exciting new project underway, restoring the former steel mill that they call Trent Manayunk, which is going to have some new construction next to it, as well as parking. Those interested can join the wait list to find out more details and what's to come at www.trentmanayunk.com. They also have 6155 Ridge Avenue, which is a new building that sits right along Roxborough's business district with units available to lease now. You can contact them on their website, www.bspdevelopment.com, their email address, rentals@baker-partners.com, or Instagram @Baker Street Partners.
Ryan Dolan here with Nick Cessna, and we got an awesome guest today that we have all just met off camera. So we have Kiersten from the Pitmilly House. So Kiersten is one of the newer business owners in the Lafayette Hill, Plymouth White Marsh area, right off Barron Hill Road. Interior designer or interior decorator,
like
or
a woodworking interior design person? Like, I don't know. I have an unusual niche, I think you could kind of say. Like, I'm not a carpenter, because carpenter is like a jack of all trades. I won't touch electrical. I won't touch plumbing. I don't want that liability. I have insurance. I have like all the things, but I like to take and finish a job and make it pretty, in the end, and make it functional. I hate like stupid storage when builders come in and do like cabinets and then they make it just like throw it up there, but they don't have a purpose. Like, where are you going to put your pots, your lasagna pans, this? Why is like the dishwasher, like the Manayunk houses, like dishwasher's like in another room half the time, or the refrigerator, like I just like to make it functional but pretty,
So you do a lot of the finishing work, the functional space, and I grew up in those Manayunk houses. Right?
That's right.
I'm well aware. I didn't even have a dishwasher. I mean, there's probably no place to put it.
No one did.
You were the dishwasher.
Yeah, I was the dishwasher, exactly. So, no, I totally understand. And there's nothing more frustrating, when you buy a new house and you're going through all this stuff and none of the cabinet space works. Like, why the hell did this guy put this there? Why? So no, and I didn't know much about your business until you walked in, and I had just coincidentally drove by it on the way in. So your space is awesome. It looks like it was an old gas station, office building.
Yeah,
like a mechanic shop, right?
So it was a gas station, an old golf, and then it got turned into like a service station.
Yeah.
You get your oil changes and all that.
It was like a green sign for a long time.
It's still there. We just we were holding it so we could put our sign up there. We didn't want to take it down, hoping it was grandfathered in, but we're not allowed to. You're not allowed to have any of those signs anymore.
Really?
No, you got to get a variance. You're
technically Lafayette Hill, I guess, right there, right? So I guess for everybody trying to envision, or if they're not watching the video, it's right there on the bend across from your Brittingham's Pub, the Barron Hill Firehouse. And I know I had questions about it because it's Pitmilly House, and you're like, well, what's this old gas station, store, auto shop? What is it? Like, what do they do? Because it's a beautiful space that you created on the exterior.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm assuming you did that yourself?
So there was a guy that had it under contract, and then he was going to put a virtual golf place in there. And he had architectural drawings. He had like everything kind of done up, but then he ended up getting into something else, and he moved down. He was down in like South Carolina or North Carolina. So then he just didn't want to go through with it anymore. But honestly, I think it was because like township, like parking, you're not allowed to park in the front.
What?
You can only park on the sides. There's like a lot of strict codes for businesses like around here. Like Lafayette Hill is more lenient than like Plymouth Meeting and all that. But I think that put a lot of people off. And there was a lot of offers. One woman wanted to do a bakery in there and a coffee shop. But again, it was parking. It was variances. There was like a lot of things in there. So I know that a lot of people wanted it because they wanted to be a woodworker and have a shop in there. And technically, like mine's like a studio kind of shop. Like everything's portable because I build a lot on site.
Okay.
I'm kind of go back and forth in there. So like it can't be like a permanent fixed shop in there because of noise. for neighbors.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so you're heavy equipment. So I guess you're not are you working out of the shop though, you said?
Yeah, I work in and out of the shop. I'm a lot because it's a flex space considered.
I see, understood.
So like my table saw, even though it's a professional table saw, it's on wheels. So that's okay. And all the ampage for all my tools and everything is under certain things. So I could use the space still, but it can be moved around.
I'm sure like once like everything is finalized with permits and all that stuff, like no one's really coming back and checking on you. I highly doubt.
The fire marshal comes.
You're right across the street from
there's that. But you know what it is? It's like I think it's just like with anything, and you probably deal with this with people. If you just listen, follow their rules, and are compliant, and do what they say, and just stay what you say, then
they just leave you alone.
Yeah, and I mean, and they're actually really decent people.
Sure.
It's just that everyone in the township that wanted that building gave them a hard time. So they'd be like, we would let you do that, but then all these other people would be like, but you didn't let us do that and this, and they're like, we just have to follow
Sometimes, small local governments like that, they're their own worst enemy in growth.
Yeah.
It's like, and I get it, they want to keep it a small town and all that stuff, but you need some modern growth as well. I mean, there's got to be that balance, and sometimes
But every kind of deal is different. To your point, like you said that, the previous people were probably beating them up. So you kind of get a different taste in your mouth. So I'm curious to see why that space and how that space, because it's interesting, right? To your point, it could have been a bakery, golf simulator.
Yeah.
It could have been really anything. And
all things that would have probably excelled.
Yeah. And it's in that kind of location where I do think all those things probably will work. But I think your business being in there is kind of a unique space, right? You're kind of wedged between Chestnut Hill, Lafayette Hill. So there are more, I guess, in our world, it seems like higher price points.
Affluent. You're very close to very affluent neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So
I just got really lucky. Like I fell into this,
tell me,
guys.
Because I'm curious to see.
I went from being a fashion designer to a realtor and it all had to do with kids, having kids and basing, my time around them to take care of them. Because my husband was the breadwinner, and he was always like, he's always been like my biggest cheerleader and supporter. Like, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do this? But my daughter had all kinds of like food allergies for the first 2 years. So it was just like no one could hold her. No one could. So that was my life, was just, and my poor son who was older, I was like, we'd be on a playground. I'm like, come on, we got to go home because she's screaming,
Yeah.
So then I kind of figured out, I tried the real estate thing, and it really was hard with kids to do because you have to be there for your client. And I'm very a people pleaser.
Sure.
So
it's hard to say no.
Yeah. And I couldn't do it. And it really wore on my family. So then, I went back to my roots of fashion design, and I wanted to create a children's clothing line, but not like, oh, here's some cute clothes. I wanted to be tough and durable because my son would come home with I'd get him a new pair of pants, rip in the knee. He was a collar chewer, and then I had friends whose kids had sensory issues. So it was tags, seams, and all that. And a lot of it had to do with durability for the kids' clothes. The kid, it's so frustrating. You're constantly, especially with boys, I was constantly buying T-shirts.
I was ripping off tags last night right before bed.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. So I came up with...
You're probably the resident expert on that stuff.
Ripping them off all the time.
I came up with a whole line. I mean, it was... The T-shirts were firemen wear these things. They're in military grade threads. You couldn't chew through them. But it all was a huge process, learning curve, where I had a factory. I got ghosted by a factory. I lost all my stuff. Had to go back at it. And then I found a place in Jersey. So finally, it was a small factory, did small runs. I got all my fabrics. I got all that. And COVID hit. So then it was just right before all my stuff was finally getting sewn, everything got shut down. So it was in the midst of that, trying to figure out, well, what can I do? Because I paid all this money into this. What can I do to kind of make money on that? And my friend was like, oh, there's always people looking for stuff on Women of White Marsh and this, just little things to be done. You know how to do that. I was like, all right, tag me in everything except wallpaper. I hate doing wallpaper, electrical or plumbing. Yeah. So I went and I started doing that. And I worked in this one woman's house, was getting her house ready for sale. She was over in East Norton. And I was there. I felt I don't know if you guys remember Murphy Brown?
Yeah,
remember the painter? Yeah. I was the painter. I stayed in this woman's house. She just ended up putting me on payroll. She had a garage full of every tool, every supply, And I ended up just completely redoing her house for like 3 months. And I'm like, wow. And I kind of started building up kind of like a little bit of a portfolio. And then I would just post pictures of what I was doing. Before that, we had bought a house in Manayunk, a twin Trinity. And so I redid that whole house. And I had so people kind of knew I could do this because I would take pictures. But that was mine.
Did that start in the Manayunk house, or was that like a childhood kind of thing?
I mean, my parents
Where'd you grow up at?
3 outside of West Point, up in New York.
Okay.
Or out there. It's like a small town, but it's not like what it was.
Where Army is?
No, it's Highland Mills, New York. So it was like 15 minutes from West Point Military Academy, right on the Hudson River. But
who is undefeated right now, by the way, in a football team?
Are they?
First time in a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Their football
their
games
coach
are
is
a lot of fun.
So you're New York. Then did parents, mom, dad, did somebody work with their hands? I mean, because a Manayunk Trinity is kind of, or those old homes in Manayunk are quite the project. A lot of our clients don't even go near them because they're such a daunting kind of.
It's the plaster. I hate.
If you can do my dad always says, if you can do carpentry in Manayunk, you can build anything.
Because no wall.
Because nothing is square, nothing is level.
But I got to tell you, my Manayunk house probably had straighter walls than brand new builds that I work on.
No doubt.
Like when I go to install like any of my cabinets, I'm like, oh, okay. My husband's like, what's taking you so long? And I'm like, leveling the cabinets will take a day in some of these houses. So
amazing.
But we grew up. So my dad was like jack of all trades. He could do anything. I remember our refrigerator broke. I don't know how many times. That guy rewired it, rebuilt it. He had an auto body shank. He would bring it to the auto body, the doors, paint it up to the new trending color. Like, he could fix anything. We called him a MacGyver. And then he taught us.
They're like a dying breed because those guys don't exist anymore.
They don't. And we always are like, if my father went to college, he would have been, who knows what.
He could have been anything, right? One of those guys.
Yeah, his parents just didn't put him through. They're like, no, you're nothing. And he was so smart.
They were like amateur engineers. Yes,
he could have been an insane engineer, like really, really good. And then my mom, she wanted to be a carpenter, but when she was in high school, she wanted to take shop, and they wouldn't let a woman or girls take shop. So she had my grandma go down there and talk to the principal, and the principal said, oh, come on, she just wants to talk with the boys. And she was like, well, no, she really wants to learn it. They're like, no, she'll be a distraction. So she could never do that. And then she came home from school one day, and my grandparents were like, oh, we went and we found your college. You're going to be a secretary. This is where you're going. And it was like, my mom's insane with design. She's so good at like all of that, like to see what she could have done if she went into that field. And so she was like my first art teacher and design teacher.
I was just going to say, you have these two strong personalities in your household that have these like raw talents that you're never cultivated.
We never hired anyone. We had a carpenter, I remember, who built like our bookcases one time because my dad was too busy. And then we put on an addition, and so we needed to hire a guy to pour the concrete and all that. But my dad, he did everything. We had one guy in the neighborhood that he would kind of hire and bring on when he couldn't do it. And then he had us. He had 3 girls. I'm the youngest of 3. And it was just like, what are you doing this weekend, Kiersten? Can you hang out? I'm like, no, we got to go build a fence. We got to go like put up walls and sheetrocking. So
your other sisters would do the stuff with your dad
all of us would do it. And we all hated it. Like, we were all like, oh. I remember just like sneaking out and hiding behind a couch and like eating something, and my mom would be like, what are you doing? I'm like, It's like, you had to make yourself busy or they were going to give you something. But without that, like, I wouldn't know how to use any power tools. And that's the one thing I try to teach actually my clients when I'm there, because they'll be like, could you change my hardware on my cabinets? I'm like, no, you can do it. I'm going to show you how to do it. Grab my drill, and just because it's simple things. I think it's intimidating to learn a tool, but once you know how to use it, it's not bad at all.
So you're actually bringing the client in sometimes and saying like, hey, it's not even that difficult.
Well, because I feel I'm not taking your money if it's something that you could do.
Hey, if they want to give it to you.
Yeah.
They want to give it to you.
But no, I know what you mean.
There's a balance for it.
But some people too just don't want to learn. They're like, listen, I ain't got the time for that. I'll pay you.
I pay people to do some things that I do. Like, I don't have the time for it. But when it's like, I know that they could do it. I know they have the time for it. So it's something simple. I just would feel silly charging them for something.
I actually like that.
And I think it's like really good when you can stand back and look at something you do. It's like the best feeling in the world.
So I built my house for my wife, and I told her when it was done, don't ask me to even hang a photo. It's like, and she'll tell you right now, like, she has to call my guys to get stuff done because I'm not doing anything there. Like,
if you see my house, my husband's always like, you used to always build things and you used to always do all this stuff. He's like, you never do anything around. It's like, I'm the same way. I come home and I'm tired. And I'm like, I don't want to do it.
Everyone else's stuff looks great.
I know. That's what he was like. All these people, like, they have great stuff. And now, like, our house is, and I get embarrassed when people come over. I'm like, oh my God, I do this for a living. I'm like, don't look there.
Well, I mean, what can you do, right? One, it's you're trying to scale your business. And two, you have children, so they kind of, I'm sure they bang it up anyway. Yeah. So I get it. I mean, we were just having this discussion, my wife and I, this morning. I'm like, man, like, the hotel looks good, the rentals look good, but our house looks like crap. Mm-hmm. And it's like, by the time you sit down and you relax and finally get done dinner, you're like, this can wait.
Yeah.
Like, this can wait. So
with kids, you got to like repaint your house like every couple of years. They tear the shit up. Especially kids our age. Like our kids are. It's
buck wild. So now I'm fascinated by how you and your sisters learned all this stuff from mom and dad. You said you came down here and went to Textile University for, the listeners, I guess the younger listeners, it's Jefferson University now.
Yeah, it went through quite a few
used to be
names.
Philly U.
I
still call it Textile a lot.
Yeah.
So Textile is kind of what I remember it as a kid, right? So that was more... That was fashion design back then as well, correct? And then Philly U was all fashion.
And they had like physician's assistant, architecture, like all, it was design. It was like a big
So
design.
Now it's a mix of both, obviously.
Yeah.
It's transitioned to more of the healthcare and design.
I feel like it's like a lot of healthcare. I mean, I drove by that and it's phenomenal looking.
Yeah, it's
like,
completely different from what
I'm
you
like,
were
I would have loved to have gone in those sewing labs. Like ours were just so old and beat up.
Even the basketball court. Like I was there watching a few different Roman games in the past couple of years. It's nice. It's a great place to watch basketball.
It's a beautiful campus. And it's nice and small. Like, so it's not too much and overwhelming.
Yeah, it was because you didn't know many, and I grew up in Manayunk, so did Nick. So like a lot of the local people did not go there, right? It was a lot of your New York, your New Jersey, and people from down south.
Do you feel that way? Because when I went there, everyone was from Pennsylvania.
Really?
And they were
maybe Pennsylvania.
They were like, no one. They were like, you're from New York? Oh, do you? And they right away assumed that I like knew people in Albany and New York City. And I'm like, it's really.
I guess from my experience, just being local, I felt like everyone I met was some fashion designer from New York.
We used to go fishing for girls.
I was going to say.
Well, it was a 7-to-2 ratio. Guys for every 7
We would make
girls.
the trek over the Textile Bridge quite a bit for parties and things like that, and we were like, man, these are all these like high fashion girls and stuff like that. So it was nice. But no, so and then you got into the fashion design world, and which kind of plays into the interior design, obviously.
Yeah.
But how did you figure like, hey, this isn't kind of the direction I want to go? I want to do more stuff hands-on. I want to be more in homes.
Well, when I had the clothing company that kind of like started and then it kind of it just slowly fizzled out. And what I was doing was growing and I really enjoyed it. And it was kind of like, I think this is going to get put to bed and I think I want to do this. So that's when I had gotten my general contractors, like I got the insurance, got like all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was using my husband's truck and all my tools, like just loading it up and every day unloading it, putting it in the shed. I never had like a full workspace. I built everything outside my house, then would load it up, go outside. So you spend like 2-3 hours just for setup and cleanup every day, and it was killing me. And then it was hard because, I'm sure you guys feel the same way when you're at work and it's like, I got to get home because one of the kids now needs to be picked up from the school or dinner, or they got to go here and there. And it was a really hard struggle because I'm like, if I could just have 20 more minutes, I could finish cutting. But now I have to close it up and then set up the saw again tomorrow,
Rinse and repeat. 3 more hours of setup when you're right there.
It was so tough. So it was just kind of figuring out, all right, is this something that I'm going to do long term? Is this something? But I always loved it. And even when I started my clothing company, I was like, Mom, I launched the website. Here it is. She goes, oh, well, if it doesn't work out. And I'm like, what? My mom's like the sweetest woman ever. And I was like, what? And I called my sister. I was like, what is she doing in her old age? Like, what did she say that? And it was when I started doing this, and then it really started, like, I got the van. And my husband, he was like, you need a van. You need a place.
Is he in trade? Like, what does he do for work?
So he's an environmental engineer. So the other half of the building is his company. So he has Claymore Environmental, and then he has a bunch of water treatments and like environmental places up in the Poconos, and then like he's kind of like, he's so good at business. Like he always ran my books, and he always like does all that because I'm horrible at that.
What's he do, like ponds and
so he does do
and
ponds and lakes up more towards the Poconos, and then even down here they'll do that. But here, so if you buy a gas station and there's tanks still on the ground, and if they got to be pulled, if they got to be cleaned out, that's who you hire. And then or he'll run like dry cleaners. They're like huge pollutants. So you'll need environmental reports written up for a lot of the time, for purchasing agreements for real estate.
So he's going off like the drill core samples and stuff like that.
Yeah. So he'll do all the testing for your sites. Like a lot of the sites, he's got a bunch of them down in Philly that'll go, and they're just like polluted, and people want to buy them, but they need to know. And a lot of times they could get assistance from the DEP for, you can get extra funding to clean it up and buy
to extract all that stuff.
Property. Right? Yeah. So that's what he does.
So, and then I guess it was a combo kind of joint venture with that building then. Like say, hey, we can buy both and keep both.
So originally, I always loved that building. Like I'm always like, oh my gosh, it's like, my house is literally like just down the street here. And so it was like, it was a no-brainer, but every place I was looking at was in Bridgeport, or the place that my husband found was like Flowertip, but it was like either too far away. You figure Bridgeport, that traffic on 23, like coming over.
It's just like your breakdown and setup. It's the time.
It's going to be. And if I need to go, if I'm in the middle of painting and I need to run back just to clean it up, it's going to take forever. So I always loved this place. And then when we were getting an addition on the house, our contractor was like, saw me pulling everything out of my shed, building. And he's like, you need to get her a shop. And he's like, I'm trying. So then he went and looked at that place, and we figured out, we bought it together with a partner. And then I was like, why don't you just take half of it? Because there's no way I'm going to be able to pay.
Sure.
Because we have it under like an LLC. So it's like me and the partner, we own it. And then I pay rent towards it. My husband pays rent towards it, like what you normally would do. But it was definitely, I would have never been able to live in that shop myself and run it without and pay all those bills. I would have gone down.
Yeah, because I see it, and our business listeners are curious about that stuff. They're always asking, like, well, how did that person scale up? Did they come from money, or what move did they make?
Immediately, everyone thinks you got all the money.
Yeah, they think you got. Well, oh my God, they bought a building and did like exterior work, so they're super rich, right? Like, and it's like it's not that.
It's not that. You got to
tell us kind of how that all kind of like looks, because our listeners love to hear the real deal on that stuff, because it seems so unattainable for a small entrepreneur to do that. But I
think you have to have the right people, first of all, in your pocket. You have to have a good support system, no matter what. Even if you're going to try it on your own, you really need good support. I think you need to have people that you could fall and pick. I'm sure you guys pick each other's ears constantly.
Oh, yeah.
You need to have that. Like, I would have never been able to do this without my husband, because he's got that kind of skill set. He was like, all right, we're going to put this offer. No, this is what we're going to say.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do. And looking at financing here, he found me my SBA loan, which is massive right now.
It's
huge, and it doubled in my monthly
So tell us
payments.
a little bit, and not to pivot off of that, and you don't have to go into particulars of your actual loan, but tell us that process, that SBA loan, because I'm familiar with that as well.
Right.
We went through that with our project down in Old City, but tell us a little bit about that, because there's a lot of people that are curious about that.
So you can't just get an SBA loan if you just started up your company. You have to, it's been running for like 2 years.
Yeah.
You have to show a stable income and everything with that. And then, it's a lot. I feel as though I got approved because there's a certain section right now for women starting up their own companies and working, especially in the trades. They want women-owned businesses, out there. And I was really fortunate about that. And just for the record, I'm not like one of those people who are like, men are terrible, women are this, because people always ask me that. They're like, don't you feel like men in the industry just look down? I was like, they're like the biggest supporters. I'm at Home Depot. They're always like, do you need help with that? What do you need? And like, they're just, even when I'm on a job site, they treat me like their own.
Sure.
I
wasn't even going to ask that question, because, obviously the elephant in the room was like, why is a girl in there with overalls doing construction work? Like,
I get that a lot.
That's
and
like
I
the
think
look.
that,
God, we're not haters, right? Like,
no.
we always want to see
people. I hate that people think that about you guys. It really bothers me.
We're like major supporters of any color, creed, anybody in our space to like kick ass, because it means better things for us. Right?
I wanted you on the show because I saw your Instagram presence, and I drove past the building that you have, and I'm like, what is that? Like, what is Pitmilly House? And I look it up, and I'm like, oh, this is fucking cool.
Like this you have a great social media following, which we always discuss.
There's a woman here doing like carpentry. Like, this is fucking cool, right? So I'm like, this is great. Like, I have daughters. They're, you know, I'm in the trades, and it's a very male dominated industry.
I'm like, I got to tell you, I'm like scared shitless when I go on a job site. When I'm in those, like, I'm always like, I'm like, they're probably thinking I'm doing it wrong, or that's not perfect, or this. Like, I'm my worst critic, but I get so intimidated around you guys on a job.
See, I think guys would like, I think we'd be more inclined to help a woman, because it's like you don't see many women, so it's like I wouldn't think. Like, now, if a guy was doing something wrong, I'd be like, "Yo, asshole, what are you doing?" Right? If I see a woman doing something wrong, I'd be like, "Hey," because I would not want you to be embarrassed and have somebody else come in. So I'd be like, oh, "Hold on, like here's a suggestion. You do what you want, but this is how I've always done it, and these are the mistakes that I've made along the way. This is what I've learned." Because I wouldn't want to see one of the assholes come in and have something to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then I would probably also like jump down the guy's fucking throat too. But I think there's more men that have my mentality on that.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, we got to get her on the show. Like, this is
well,
we
when
got
you
to learn
reached
her
out,
story.
I was like, wait, why do you even need, like, I'm just me.
And we kind of wing it, so we didn't even really discuss it. I'm like, Pitmilly House. That sounds so familiar. And obviously, again, I drove by the business, and I was so curious. And then we looked on your social.
He was sitting there eating lunch in the other room, and I like pull up your Instagram. I'm like, she's coming on the show next, and he was like, oh, this is fucking cool. Yeah, and then he like went to like your website.
Well, because
like,
we're
this
always
is awesome.
curious about, like, obviously how you scale. Like, how do you get 17,000 followers on social media when the business just started? How long ago was it?
Well, it's like it was probably like, say, 2001, really, when I started working for other people.
Okay.
Like 2000, I was in that one woman's house, but then it was, I just, you know, I just posted stuff. Like, I've never advertised. I've never did that. It's all word of mouth, and just keep posting my work. And so people are like, can you do this for me? And so I would just post that. And like, and I always try to get people to do like I love hidden shit. Like, I love multifunctional shit. So I'm always like, hey, and they're like, no, we're in a budget here. I'm like,
I just sent my wife a thing the other day I saw, and I'll send it to you on Instagram. It was under stair storage. So it was like a normal hallway, you know, with steps going up, similar to like these Lafayette Hill houses where you have like a formal living room and another living room or dining room on this side, and the hallway from the front door. And underneath the steps is kind of dead space.
Yeah.
And this guy took all the framing out, kind of just like left it open, and then built cabinets, and then just like slid them in and then trimmed them out. And I was like, this is such good use of fucking space.
So
awesome.
You'll use multifunction space which we need to start doing. So we're probably going to have a conversation after this, because it's like my house, and like all of our houses, there's so many different things that we want to do. Guys like me, I don't know how to do it, right? I work in real estate investing, maybe some flips, some rentals, but we don't know how to do them, right? So it's like, who do we call? And like, so Pitmilly in 2001, when you were in this woman's house, that's kind of when the whole love affair with the whole construction bit started. Like, hey, I'm just going to keep going.
I know. Well, I've always loved to build since I was little.
Yeah.
Like, as much as like I hated on the weekends having to do that, I owned my dad's workshop, like, downstairs.
Right, yeah.
Like, we were always in there building. I think out of like all my sisters, my one sister was interior designer. Now she does basically textile design and patterns and everything. She's killing it. And then my other sister does like staging for houses and everything, and, you know, before for realtors or whatever. And then, but I've always loved to build. So back to like when my mom told me, if it doesn't work out. So when I did this and then they came and they saw the shop, she was just like, I knew that this was what you were always meant to do. You know, I just knew it. And I think that was like, I feel that way with the parents, you see your kid going down that path that's the wrong one, and you want to grab them and put them, but you gotta let them.
You kind of gotta let them live and learn, right?
And you gotta feel it. I think I had to feel, and you know, as much as I feel like it was like a failure, the clothing line, but the woman's house that I worked in that first time, I was like, I just don't know. I really want to do this, but I feel like I just invested all this money and I did all this stuff. And then she's like, but it's not a failure. Like, you just created and you tried something and you moved somewhere in your life. You have a chapter and now you're closing that. It's not a failure. And you're moving on. You're learning from that, and you're going to use that. And
imagine what our parents are thinking about us and our brothers doing.
Yeah, certainly weren't. We were actually failing. That sounds like real failure. No, because it's fascinating. It's like one of these things, but it sounded like Mom probably knew the whole time, right? Like she gently said, like, "Hey, if this doesn't work out."
Yeah.
She probably knew it wasn't going to work out.
For my 16th birthday, that's all I wanted, a gardening shed, a potting shed, and that's what I got. So me and my dad built it. I got my first tool belt, all my chisels, like all the tools, and like learned to do things. But I am very much like my son too at times, where I'll be like, no, I know. But with power tools, it was like, you didn't mess around. Like my sister cut her thumb off on the table saw trying to make a frame.
we know all about that. Our buddy Tommy did that, cutting the heads of G.I. Joes off when we were kids.
Oh God, it was just
like table saw too.
Yeah. But then we were still allowed to use the workshop and cut and drill and we hurt ourselves a lot, but it was just, we weren't scared to go back and try it again.
Yeah.
And I think that learning, she didn't really build after that one, but it's like learning to like respect the tool, and I think that actually gave me a little bit of fear to like try new tools. I'd always make people show me how to use them afterwards because I'm like, I don't want to. You see the videos like now on Instagram, you can see all these horrible things.
This episode is brought to you by Downtown Mechanical. Downtown Mechanical is your one-stop shop for all of your HVAC needs, residential and light commercial. Downtown Mechanical specializes in installation of full units, swap outs, repair, service, rooftop units, mini split systems, heat pumps, whatever you need HVAC-wise. I personally use them on all of my properties. Matt Rispo is the owner. Great guy. I love working with them. They accept credit cards, free estimates, and they offer financing. You can get a hold of them at downtownmechanicalllc.com or by phone 215-617-3768. Speaking of table saw accidents, this particular tool became popular. I started seeing it maybe 5-10 years ago. I'm sure you've seen the videos where they take like a hot dog and they put it in and the whole table saw drops down.
Yes.
And it's like as soon as it senses some kind of like going from wood to a flesh, it just drops out. So it prevents you from getting hurt. You have one?
All my tools, I made sure that I would not cut a finger off, like everything in there. And
Does it ever do it accidentally?
So my glue on a door I was cutting wasn't completely dried, and it did that. It literally is so fast.
Did it ruin the door?
It just drops. No, it is the smartest technology you've ever seen. And it's a breaker that's in there. So you just have to replace the brake in there. You don't have to recalibrate the saw or anything. It's really neat.
I guess then the next thing that's hard from there is getting it lined up perfectly again to get into that saw blade. Because I feel like if you stop a cut sometimes, it's hard to get it like perfect again. You're almost like better off just taking like a little sliver of a blade off again and rerunning the whole thing.
So when it goes up and if it immediately just pulls down, it doesn't waver. So it pulls down and then there's this like big metal block in there that it slams into and stuff.
It doesn't damage the blade or anything?
Oh, no, you'll never get the blade out of it. Like the blade's done.
Oh, the blade's, so you got to replace the blade.
So it's...
Which they're not cheap blades a lot of times.
No, they're not. But but unfortunately, like what I do is I'll save up all my larger table saw blades or even for like my chop saw and I get them sharpened. And then like the smaller ones aren't worth it. But my son just got me like a blade sharpener thing so you could do all those. But that was an expense. And the brake is like $75 to replace that. And on top of like, $75, $90.
I mean, it's better than losing a finger in a $5,000 to $10,000 hospital bill.
Oh,
well, now, not to dive too deep into your finances, but the SBA loan plays a big part in that. Did it help you acquire all like your high tech equipment and things like that? Because most guys can't.
No, I would have been on, Craigslist, the flea markets, getting all my tools then. So I was like extremely lucky. So I made sure to break down like this X amount for tools. This is what I'm going to need for like just building materials. This is what's going to need to completely do the overhaul for the shop, which I think that no matter what, if you're in a good location, you can't go wrong fixing up a building. I think that if you're going to put into things, I mean, you're the same way with like flipping stuff. It's like, what to put the money in and what not to. If like you have a client that's moving and they're only going to be in the house for maybe like 2 years, you're not going to go ahead and put like a ton of money. Even when people call me out to do stuff, I was like, well, how long do you plan on living here?
Yeah, it's a major question, right?
Yeah.
It's on anything you do, even on the financing end. We always have to say, like, hey, what you would do in 3 years does not mimic what you would do in 10, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's always going to be a different strategy to kind of do it.
The first time I ever saw that was going on jobs with my dad when I was younger, and my dad did HVAC. And people would say, like, hey, child, I want you to replace this, this heater. And he would be like, well, hold on. How long do you plan on living here? And they're like, oh, we're probably going to sell in a year or two. Like, then don't put a new unit in. Like, just pay me to fix it. And then if you got to pay me another $300 in 6 months to put another Band-Aid on it, just do that. Or, people, he would say, how long are you going to live here? Like, where you are replacing a whole unit. And it was, well, if you're going to live here forever, then let's spend the money now for a more high efficient unit, because it's going to save you the money in the long run for energy usage.
Yeah.
And it's actually going to spend less money. So if I put the cheap unit in, you're going to be spending more money in utilities every month. But if you're living here for 30 years, this unit may, if you take care of it, may last 30 years because it's an expensive unit.
Yeah.
And then it's less energy that you're using. So it's less money in the long run.
But you said you held your license in real estate too, so you know very well. Step one's always acquiring the property at the right price, right? It's all about the acquisition.
It's 100%.
So it's like,
yeah.
And now you had the extra leg up because you can actually do the sweat equity, right? Like you can build the work, and we're big on it. Anything we always buy, it's like we're hyper focused on the acquisition price. Like, don't care about rates, can't control them. Don't care about banking fees, can't control them, right?
Yeah.
Like we can control what we control, and if you can acquire an asset or a building at a right price, like, well, you can fall flat on your face a couple times and be all right.
Yeah.
So and that building you acquired, you could almost say you want to.
I mean, it's
say
so
you want to move.
Oh, my husband
on,
looks at it. He's like, "Listen, we could sell it right now."
Yeah, before you buy it, then you're already talking about selling it. I know.
Go?
Plus, it's not too customized, right? Like it's somebody else could kind of take the sign down and go right in and kind of make it their own.
Yeah, and you could even just throw up, like, take the shop doors down, and you could just close them off, put in windows. It's like it's because the whole entire building was cinder block. That's what it was, and they had these awesome like rafters, but for code you couldn't like expose them for them. But it was just you could really. We've already changed it from like a conference room and put another divide in, made another office because my husband's like outgrowing that place so fast. But the only thing is to rent it. Like, we have the bathroom is like on his side. I have a sink in my shop, but it's like. So it's a tricky thing to rent. I mean, you could rent it out, like the shop side, to landscapers, to, anyone who wants to store their trucks and all that stuff if you needed extra income from there. But as far as like the total use, that's the only thing, is finding that, which I don't think it would be hard to do, or people could easily change that into other things.
Yeah, I was going to say it can convert into so many different things.
Yeah.
And that's why when you guys bought that building, I was like, well, I'm still very curious to like, what are they doing in there? So majority of the time you're building right there on site. So you're doing a majority of your finishing builds there, going to your clients' houses and then installing them.
I try to get as much building and whatever I can do in the shop. I try to do
messy stuff.
Yeah. And that way, cause you know how it is, like I clean my sites every time I'm leaving. It's vacuum the floors. Like, it's got to be clean because they have kids, they have dogs, they have pets. I don't want to be in someone's hair. So the least amount of time I could be at their house, the better.
So what does that look like from a job perspective? Say if I called you and said, hey, I have a 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom house, would you do a total top to bottom kind of reno, or you say, hey, I'll come in and do the cabinetry work and things like that? Like, what would...
So it's literally just me that's in there. I had a kid from the tech school working for me at one point, and then I found it hard to, like, he was super smart and super, like, he the best cutter ever. You know, it is. You get someone, they'll mess up your boards and you're going to be like paying out the butt just for boards, but he could cut it perfect. But it was, other things, just being able to leave them to do it. Like, I would love to have an experienced person just to run the shop.
Sure.
So then I could go out and do other things, or just design my builds and then have him build it or her build it.
You know where you might be able to find a guy like that is a guy retiring from finished carpentry.
I would love to find that
unicorn that doesn't want to deal with customers, doesn't want to deal with bidding jobs and doing this and that, doesn't want to work 60 hours a week, but like, hey, I have a shop. I have these things coming. This is what I need it done by. You can come in the shop and build me this. Like, there's those guys are out there.
I would love. I've been looking for one of them forever. Like in Rittenhouse Lumber, they have a guy back in there. He builds all the cabinets and everything. If you go back into the mill there, it's just this old guy and he's in his element.
They have some cool wood there, like some unique wood that you can get from there.
And then that would just allow you to go out because you're doing the sales more or less. You're doing the bidding. You're doing all that stuff, right? So it's like you're going to eventually need that to grow the business. So what is that part of your goal moving forward?
I would love to have that, or it's like, I mean, I think about this a lot because I really do love building. I really enjoy like doing all that stuff. And I loved like making something I've drawn like come to life. But in order really to turn a profit and make money, because that's another thing is I think people, whenever I drop a proposal, they're like, because one, the cost of materials,
it's expensive.
It's
Everything's
expensive. And then I have overhead, I have the shop, I have the van, I have all this stuff, the SBA. It's just, so you just got to make sure when you do get that SBA loan, before you even sign it, are you going to be able to pay that? And then your overhead and bring in that income. Like how much are you going to increase your rate to cover that?
You're probably not charging people enough.
Because
you seem like, just from talking to you for like 30-40 minutes now, like you're a very nice person, so you're probably like, oh shit, am I charging this person too much? You could probably charge people more. And like you have, like, just on your social media following alone, I imagine that you have a backlog of work and you're turning work down, or you're telling people, hey, I can't get to you for 6 months. I imagine that's what's happening right now.
Well, that is what's happening. And I've been telling people, I'm like, listen, I just have a wait list, but I could draw up your design for you if you have a carpenter. And that's just the hardest thing is no one has a carpenter. And I don't, I've seen people refer other people, but I haven't seen their work. And I don't want to give that guy.
So hard referring people.
Right?
So hard.
And it's like, so if you guys know a good carpenter, so just let me know. Because that's the one thing is, and then I got a lot of people in the city wanting me to come down, and I just can't do the city.
I was just going to say, my next question was, as you're trying to juggle the business up here, can you even get your footprint to become bigger? The city, again, as we talk about that time, if it's just you, that's 2 hours.
And I think that it's like a lot of the locations, I don't have that set up space outside, and I can't, I'm nervous to kind of leaving my saw out.
You'll take your whole goddamn van.
Yeah, I know. That's what.
So like the other thing is too is like I'm sure this is happening to you already, where people are just trying to throw you even more money, because I've had people when I stopped doing kitchens and baths 5 years ago, whenever it was, I'd have people like, listen, Nick, I'll give you 60 grand right now, just come do my kitchen, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to do it. No, I'll give you 65,000, come do it, just put me at the top of the list. I'm like, there is no list anymore. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like people are just wanting to throw money at you and especially they're going to see, your social media stuff that you're doing these cool videos, and they're seeing the passion that you have for it. And they're going to be trying to like throw you more money. Like, put me on top of the list. I would love
that, but no, I have not had
It's going to happen. Trust me.
But it is like, I do. So I go, I'll go like mainline. I do that. I'll do like Plymouth. Like I just have to make sure. I was out in Maple Glen, and that was a little tough. The commute back was like the traffic and that to get back, because a lot of times I have to go out to like the middle school up in like Plymouth there.
Shit, even with the road work out here out front is
oh my God, I can't
wait
till
it's done.
When we bought this shop, I was like, this is awesome. 5 minutes from the house, and they closed that road.
I can't wait till it's done.
You gotta be kidding me.
I'm here in like November.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's
that's
like,
what
the way that they work out here. It's bizarre to me. Like that's the government work though. Like those contracts and stuff, like they're just charging so much money. They don't give a fuck. There's guys just standing around all the time.
Well, I am just down below here, right off Barron Hill, and they've been doing all like the water pipes all underground. And I got so annoyed because I'm 5 minutes from here, and it'll take me like 25 minutes to get home, because I drove down. I went to go turn off by the shop to come down Church here, and as soon as I turned, it was like backed up. I was like, all right, so I backed around, and then I was like, all right, I'm gonna go down. I'll go down the next one. Nope, backed around, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Then I go down Joshua, and they had that first entrance into my development was road closed, and then I was like, damn. So I went to the second road closed, and then I had to go back around to Barron Hill. I'm like, because of this, like then everything is getting worked
The good news is it's such a perfect hub if you do ever get into the city or outside of it. It's a perfect location really for it. That's why you see so many small businesses, and that's why enjoy talking to small business owners, like, well, why up here? And like, what's the draw, obviously. So one thing you said, and we keep going back to like, it's just you, right? So like time, what's a typical job take? Is it a week? Is it 10 days? I know they're all different, right?
Yeah, they are all different.
But like, are you in a house for a month? Is that too long? Like, what's your kind of sweet spot?
Well, it depends on the job. It really does. But like paneling, like I just did a dining room, and that's like a week, you'd say, because I got to go prep the boards. I like to try to cut them all down and get them ready.
Is that the one with the gray like board and batten that you did?
Yeah.
You put up a video. That's cool.
And then, and I'm doing their foyer just now, so that's like another week.
Are you spraying all that off site?
Yeah, I'll spray it off site. If I could be in a closed room where I don't have to tape off too much, then I can go ahead and do that. But I just don't want like the.
You're
dust.
running like HEPA air filters and stuff if you're at the person's house.
Like that, and that's why I had the festool and all that stuff, because it's all like, it saves me probably like 45 minutes of dust and sanding. Like I could sand on site with that.
The
like
festool vacuums are awesome.
It's insane. It works
awesome.
so good. There's nothing. It's just like, even with I have like a palm jigsaw, and that throws like a lot of dust. But if I go ahead and use that, there's like barely anything. The track saw, there's like nothing. Yeah. So that's huge. And that's where it's like, if you're starting out a company and you're going to be getting like your basic tools, one, reach out to someone who's in the industry. Like I have my one friend who is in New York, and he's an insane woodworker. Oh, I ask him I was like, can you just move up here? But I was like, what do I need for the shop? Like, what are some tools you recommend that I definitely need and what I don't need? And so he had wrote the list, and then I fell in love with festool, watching it on like the Instagram videos.
They're awesome.
And I was just like, oh my gosh. And
they're overly engineered. They're like BMWs.
Oh, it's phenomenal, and they work so great. Having the right tool is saved me so much time. It might cost a lot of money, in the beginning, but it's saving me money.
Sure.
Because now, instead of having like those extra hours for cleanup and prep and all that, I'm barely doing it. It's. And
then you're doing it the right way. You don't got to go back. So
yeah.
I definitely don't miss that stuff. Like I don't miss. I miss the interaction with the clients, but I don't miss having to set up like ICRA walls, like all the plastic stuff and HEPA filters and doing all that stuff, putting the plastic down on the ground and vacuuming everything and creating a negative airspace room. So, and then if they have kids, you can't leave saws out and stuff like that. You have to like,
even like the little bits
you have to wrap stuff up.
Like little scraps, like if there's anything like the trim, your cord around here, like dogs, they'll take that. You gotta like make sure it's like tucked away.
Now like we just like, my guy's like all right, like, hey, we're getting done at 5:30 tonight, and like it's like, all right, just yank the power cord out and walk out the door and lock the door. Just everything, it's like in certain neighborhoods. Other neighborhoods you have to pull stuff out and put it in a van and all. But I used to say anything with a battery or that plugs in, never leave on site. But I don't work in those neighborhoods anymore. I don't invest in those neighborhoods anymore.
You just never know. I mean, we get break-ins in our neighborhood now. People going into cars, jiggling handles, breaking the handles off.
Listen, there's drug addicts everywhere.
I mean, the cost of the tools is crazy. So I guess like for you and the business moving forward, you said obviously finding good work is hard, right? Like it's hard to find an experienced carpenter that can do finishing cuts.
A finished carpenter is a wildly different thing than a carpenter. So, like, we have a lot of friends that are union carpenters, and you're probably thinking they could come and work with her. They have no idea how to do anything that she does. They know how to do metal studs and hang drywall, but they're a union carpenter.
Yeah.
Now, you take a finished carpenter like Dar, who can do anything. Like, Dar can do finished carpentry, and he can do metal studs and drywall and stuff like that, but he's a union finished carpenter. Okay. It's a huge difference.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not a job. My son hates it. Like that's when in the trades that he's looking at it, he's like, no, I hate what you do. Like, I don't like it. But
well, that's a good question to ask, because now as a parent and a business owner in that trade, are you doing what your mom did? It's like, hey, if it doesn't work out, or how are you guiding kind of your son?
So when he wanted to go to the trade school, I was kind of like,
it was his call. He wanted to go.
And I was like, I don't know. And I was big on it because I had this kid working for me, and I think the trades are like huge. Like they're dying. Like there's not a lot of us anymore, and no one wants to do it, and no one knows how to do it, and
that's why you can charge so much fucking money.
I would love to turn back the hands of time 20 years. I'd do it. I'd listen up.
It's just crazy. So And where I went to school,
I think it's like for every 8 that are retiring, there's 1 coming in. It's like some staggering number.
And the kids, the thing about the tech schools are like where I went to school, it was like a joke. Like all the bad kids did tech. Like they just were like.
I wish they had tech in our high school.
We just had this one.
wish.
You didn't have it?
No. We went to Roman Catholic High School, and they used to have it. So my plumber, he went there in the 70s. Joe, he went there in the 70s, and he used to go to Dobbins or something like that. Like 3 days a week, they would send him up there and do his trade stuff. But no, I mean, they didn't have it when we were there. I know they don't have it.
It was on a popular
there.
thing around. We just had a small business owner here a couple of weeks ago, and she was saying like how her father was a teacher, but he was a auto mechanic teacher in the school, but then parlayed that into an auto body shop, obviously, and kept doing all that thing. So whatever he did learn in school, that kind of like spread its tentacles to its kids and all of his businesses. That stuff doesn't happen anymore, like around here, which is crazy to me. Like I wouldn't know the first thing about auto mechanic construction, anything from school, especially. So which really sucks because, well, good news for you guys is there's tons of money in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and there's not the competition. So I guess, not to go back to the female male thing, right? Because I think anybody that can do work should do the work, right? But like, how does that work when you're bidding out jobs, or do people look at you and say, hey, maybe you're not qualified as the next guy? Like, how does that work? Does that ever come into play?
Do you know what's funny is like when people like request, they'll say, can I get a quote for this? And I'm like, I just don't do quotes really anymore. I'm like, I can give you an estimate of something that's, a job that I've done recently, but I can't give you, because everything I do is very custom. And it is like, it's down to the wood, to the hardware.
Which is always moving. The cost is always going up and down.
On my plywood supplier, I have to call them every single time I need a price for something because it changes.
Yeah.
It's constantly. And MDF is more expensive. Like if you go to like any Home Depot or Lowe's and you look for like MDF, just their cheap, shitty boards, it's more expensive than just wood, prime pine. Like it's crazy. That went up in COVID too. Mm-hmm. Like so much, like certain little things with that.
I use that a lot for. I use the denser MDF that I get from a supply house. I think it's the different resins and stuff in it, but I use that a lot for certain windowsills that are deeper than what I can get like a piece of pine for. If it's deeper than the 12 inches, I'll just go with that as opposed to like the pine that's put together and finger joint it and paint it, because it does paint really. It sprays really nice.
And it cuts really beautiful. So when I do all my paneling, if it's not near,
just dust everywhere though.
It is a lot.
It multiplies too.
It's an absolute horrible thing. You should never breathe it in. But it's if you get the premium, or they call it green, it is just like smooth. You could paint it. And I prefer that. I prefer to make my own trim because it's perfectly straight. Where if you're going with like just like the wood boards and everything, even if you're getting them from a good mill, they're still gonna move and they're warped. And if you have walls, like majority of the houses, they are not, they're warped and they're bent, and at least like your MDF could hug it a little bit better than a board,
Sure.
Like it's just.
The only downfall with MDF though is a lot of times if it gets wet, it just.
So they make a waterproof MDF
up.
that you could use. It's like a little bit more expensive that, but yeah, I will never use MDF by like in any of like the washrooms if I'm doing like washer dryers, laundry rooms. Or if it's near like any of the bathrooms or mud rooms, like lower things, it's going to get like snow, boots, water, any of that stuff.
So to your point, exactly. It's like, that's why, and a lot of times people don't give quotes, because how do you know that information? You don't even have that information, like what piece of wood you're going to use where, and it can totally change the outcome of price. Plus, I'm assuming in your world, you're going to get held to that quote, right? If you say, hey, it's going to cost you $20,000.
Yeah.
And it's $27,000, like there's going to be.
I mean, I've had people, and I've said, I can't tell, they're like, how much would something like this cost? I'm like, I can't tell you, but
There's
I can tell that this last job that I did, if you look at that, it was a little smaller and it costed around this amount of money. But again, that is just that it's not going to be this. And thank God the husband was there when I was saying this, because then I sent the quote and she came back and just said, this is so high. You said this. And I go, no, I said.
Yeah. This is what that previous job had cost.
And I think I found that, and I mean, you could kind of learn to read people early on, where you could tell if you're going to work with them or not.
Sure.
And that was a quick thing to find, because I would take on anything, and I would just take, oh sure, if you want me, and I would kill myself and break myself, and I would take the price down for it. And I'm like, it's not. It's, in the end, it's not worth it for my family not being there.
It's like his line of work, my line of work. We say to ourselves, like, well, why am I discounting myself here? Like, you know, you're purchasing a home and we're giving you 100% of our service. We need to pay the lights, you know, keep the lights on, have our staff, you know,
but I think you have
paid
to,
well.
I think you have to do that in the beginning because you have to make those mistakes.
Yeah.
Because then it shows you what those mistakes were worth, and you get a lot of education from those. Like, you know, and that's what makes it better. And then you can be like stern with people going forward. And you're like, no, this, you know, because I know that I'm worth this. You know, like, well, why is it going to be this on funny? Because you're going to love it, and it's going to be immaculate. It's going to be awesome. And you're not going to even think about this price, this conversation we're having when it's done, because you're going to love it. And everyone that comes over your house is going to say, oh my God, who did this? Yeah. So if you can guarantee people that, they're like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
And then they don't care about it.
And for that finishing piece, will people just be willing to spend more anyway? Because that's really kind of like it.
I think that a lot of people, when they first come to me, they just don't know what to expect. I ask them, like, do you have a budget? Do you have a number? Because I could tell you right off the bat if this is doable or not, you know? And I'm like, and again, it's not something where I'm going to look down on you for that. I mean, I can't afford some of the stuff I do. Like, it's just how it is, but that's the cost
Well,
of
it's
it.
scary. I got to be honest. A lot of people just don't know, right? They don't know, one, when they're picking up the phone, what am I even calling for? How much am I going to be embarrassed if I say $10,000, $20,000? Like,
And I tell people, I'm like, listen, if your budget is like 15 and the thing is going to cost 8, I'm not going to take your 15. I'm going to say, no, well, that's a good hefty budget. We can add stuff to it, but I'm not going to make it so it's 15. Okay. And I think I'm like that too, where people are like, what's your budget? I'm like,
yeah, that's a weird thing. Like, are you going to sell me on the highest side here, or are you going to send me what works for me?
Yeah, and right? I don't. Yeah. And again, I think that
it's a trust thing. People have to trust you.
It's a huge trust thing, and I think I've built up enough people, like, so you could see that, like, I've done it. People are happy with it, and they come back, you know. And it's always rewarding when you have that person, a previous client, come back, and I'm always like, Again, I'm my hardest critic, and I will always be like, oh God, is it good enough? I don't know if it's good enough. And when I go back into their house, I'm like, oh my God, that looks really
that's
good.
pretty good.
That's really good. Like, because I just will always doubt myself. And even like my one friend who's a woodworker, I'll call him and I'll be like, I'll show him a picture of something, and he will immediately like circle and be like, what's that? And I'm like, he's my teacher. He's just like grading it. So I'm always hard on myself. I will go back into the job the next day and fix something that I'll be laying in bed like, I got to make that. I got to fix that. Because everything I build, people are sitting in front of, or they're staring at every single day. So if I see it just then, they are going to see it. And it would bother me anyways. I would probably end up going back to the house.
Sounds like you put an extra layer of pressure on yourself.
It's my worst fault. Like, I can't let it go. And I think the longer I'm in this business, the slower I'm getting, because it's like, it has to be perfect. And I know that's absolutely the worst thing you could have in
especially
business.
When you're trying to keep the time is going to be keep moving. So I guess, does that mean hire more people? Does that mean just be able to delegate, like, you know, because that's the only way you're going to be able to kind of break free of that, right?
I think my best, like, for the long-term plan, because you can only be in the trades for so long. Your body physically can't do it. Like, it is just, I'm like, I don't know how much longer I have, and God forbid tomorrow something happens. So it's like, I got to do as much as I can now, but in the long term, I would love just to design these builds and then have someone build it. But I know right now my niche, why people want me, and telling people, like, I have a wait list, but I'm not even putting people on it. But if you want, I could design for you, and then you can have a carpenter build it. They're like, oh no, we came to you because you do everything, you know. And it's,
technically you own a job. You don't own a business right now, because if you got hurt tomorrow, and I tell people this and they're like, what? Like, what do you mean? If you got hurt tomorrow, or if you went on vacation for 3 months and you came back, would the business still be operating? No, right? So you own a job. So is it your plan to keep it as a job and be niche and, you know, charge more and do, you know, higher end stuff, or do you want a business in the future? And that's where, like, employees come into play and all that stuff. And I think probably the only way you could do that, it would be the design thing. And it's hard to put the tool belt down, and it's hard to give the reins of that horse over to somebody else. It's a difficult thing to do.
I think that, like, I'd like to ease into that and do like one build a month, you know, depending on it. If it's smaller builds, like, I'll always pull people off a wait list. Or if someone like reaches out to me like tomorrow and they were like, I need paneling, I'll be like, I could fit you in, in between these bigger jobs, because I always get pushed when there's a contractor. If someone's house is getting done, I'm always the last person to go in there. So, permitting anything, like I get pushed, so I could fill them in but I can't fill in like a build, like if I'm doing cabinets or making all that stuff, because that takes a long time.
I was going to say, like, typically what would that take about?
So like a typical build out, it'll take me like 2 weeks in the shop to go ahead and build, the thing. Yep. If it's cabinets with doors and drawers, it's going to take a little longer. And then for install, it's just, that usually when I'm putting in cabinetry and that, I'm also going to be putting in paneling, and that's when I'm on the site.
You're building the cabinets, you're not buying cabinets? Holy shit.
I'll do like ready to assemble too, where, to keep the cost down for the client too. And that's always actually really good because I can move faster on those. But
you're doing like dovetail doors and like dovetail drawers and all that stuff.
It's just all that stuff. It's like, it's all custom made. Like even like
all soft
the thing that
close.
hit my Instagram and actually made my Instagram grow was the hidden doors with the coat hooks. There's like this little closet thing.
So is that mud room that I had just looked at? Because my wife and I were looking at it. I'm like,
and you just push the doors. Cool. And that was one of the ones where I kept pushing on people. I was like, oh, you have a mud room? Do you want to do this? They're like, no, just something simple. I'm like, So when they were like, yeah, let's do it, I was like, oh, but that was all custom, handmade, like everything on that piece. And then they're across from their laundry room, there was cabinets and counters and all that.
You're probably using like crazy expensive hinges and all that, right?
Well, no, it's just, I think that if you're in this industry, you really don't need crazy expensive tools. I look back at the tools that I used to have. Like
I'm talking about the hinges on the hardware and stuff for those hidden stuff.
Those are just European hinges. You don't need, and that's everyone's just, because I'll look at something and I'll be like, okay, I could build that. That's just this base. And there's so many people that reach out and they're like, do you have the plans? Do you have this? I'm like, but it's just a cubby bench. It's just a shallow cabinet and it's this. And they're like, what type of hinges? I was like, they're just European hinges. Yeah. Like, they're like what IKEA doors have, but those are good because they're self-concealed. They can hold a lot of weight and they're smooth and soft.
I've seen people do some really cool stuff with IKEA furniture and all, making closets and all.
I have
and then they
that
customize that.
Really?
That's pretty cool, yeah.
There's a closet I'm coming up because as a finisher, if you're always brought in late for your bids, so there's no money left over for you ever. And so I'm doing a closet, and they have like this beautiful like design that they have everything coming in. And I was like, listen, I can't do that closet for your budget, but what we can do is hack IKEA. And it's amazing what you could do with that. So we're going to do like a whole hacked face, trim it out, like just make it pretty, put some face straws on it. And, you can make something look really good. Like a lot of IKEA shit isn't junk.
No,
a lot of it
really
actually
nice.
is pretty, especially if you're building it in and you're making it stable.
Yeah.
You're not pulling it around a room and making it like wobbly. So.
That's where their stuff gets messed up, moving it around and like the durability of that.
Yeah.
But if it's in place and it's locked in with trim and everything, like I could imagine it being really really
and that's
nice.
where I think a lot of people, like I started out just doing stuff. I've been doing it since I was a little kid, but really when I started doing it on my own is just, you just got to try it, and watching and learning off of other people what they're doing. You're like, oh, I could do that. And then you slowly kind of get into your niche. You get a little better and better and better. But it's, there's so much you could do out there that's cost effective for you, where like I could do high end or I could do just like the IKEA stuff.
Yeah.
That's it. And those actually work really good for me because I could fit them in between things. I'm not doing the full
I was going to say it had to fill a lot of the space there, right? Like an IKEA smaller build or something like that. I see it all the time. People building custom bars for their houses and stuff like that. They're grabbing the wood from IKEA, from whatever, and they're building the wood, and it looks great. Like,
I saw a thing that you did recently. It was really cool. It was a mantle. And you had like storage in the mantle for like remotes and stuff like that.
To flip down.
Really
I was
cool.
so excited to do that one.
That was really cool. So it looks like a floating wood mantle, like on the wall, but she made it so where like it opened up and you had storage in there, like remotes, and you could put headphones,
I have
whatever
an
you
old
want
wood
in
beam
there.
from the hotel that I took from the rafters that I want to put on my mantle. So,
those are so. I have from the Children's Playhouse that burnt down in Philly. I have a bunch of their beams that I'm using with my table legs. One day when I build my dining room table.
You know who's got some really cool wood is Manayunk Timber. Have you ever gone down there?
Yes,
I've had him do stuff. In fact, I'll have to find photos before you leave. When I built the house, I always say I built the house for my wife. Like I live there, but it's just I sleep in a bed and I have a little closet. But her peninsula that came out that she designed, I wrapped it in old reclaimed wood And then when I was down there talking to the guy down there, he's a very unique man. He's very into what he does with carpentry. And I said, man, I have the outside corners. I just don't. This old wood, like how can I miter it? It's never going to miter right together to wrap around. And I'm sitting there talking to him, and I see rusty angle iron laying in the grass. I was like, can I buy that off you? And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm going to take that. I'm going to wrap the corners in that, and I'm going to just take the burrs off and the hard rust, and I'm going to clear coat it a bunch of times and put it on there. And he was like, I'll give it to you because I want to see that. And like, so I did.
That's awesome.
It ended up being like really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And I took like, because it was drywall, and I just painted in a dark color behind it. So where you see between the cracks of the old reclaimed wood and stuff like that, it was like natural logs, like they're, and natural beams, or it's just like they're old buildings. And I took all the old outside skins that had like lead paint on them and stuff.
Yeah.
I brushed the old stuff off and just cleared them, and then put it on like a matte clear. And it turned out really cool.
That's awesome.
I don't see many people doing that stuff.
Anytime I could repurpose into there, like there was a Polish church down in the city that was getting ripped down, and this Irish guy went in there and he pulled all these church benches, and I met him, and he was like, I got all these church pews, and I was like, I remember like all night I was like, oh my God, I want some of those. And finally I was like, hey, do you want to sell any of your church pews?
Do you want any church pews?
I love church pews.
No, do you want any?
Yeah.
I'll get you some right now. My buddy's just bought a church down on Peach Street.
Yeah, we have plenty.
He just asked me, he's like, yo, you want like 100 pews? I'll give them to you.
Give me one.
Oh my gosh. You don't understand the backs of the wood on those things.
Do you want some?
Yes, I would love some. I'm gonna
No, seriously, like I'll get you.
Amazing.
You can go down and you can take whatever you want.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
He'll let you take whatever you want.
Oh my! What church did he buy?
It's rated Peachin and what's it called? Bethany. Was it like a Lutheran church?
I'm not sure. What's that? The one on Peachin Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys. I mean, he'll get you everything you know. So, well, one, I guess, kind of as we wrap up, I guess I had a question. Pitmilly House. What does it mean?
So, Morton and Pitmilly is right outside of St. Andrews in Scotland.
Yeah.
My husband's Scottish.
Okay.
So when we go over
Like
there
from
to visit,
Scotland?
yes.
Okay.
So when we go to visit his family, we'll do like a little like side trip, and his aunt was like, "You guys should stay at Morton Pitmilly. It's right by the old course hotel right there.
Yep.
And he's like, they're like, you'll love it. It's great for the kids, and it's like the most magical place I've ever been. Like, it's right on the seacoast. There's rainbows all the time there, and it's just, it is my favorite place in the world. And it was just, I named like my LLC for my clothing company was like, I didn't know what I was going to name it yet, so it was Pitmilly LLC. So then I had that LLC still from my clothing company. Instead of getting a new one, I'm like, I just ended up adding in like home repair and whatever to that. And I was like, all right, Pitmilly House. But it turned out, and I was like, I searched first to make sure there was like no other Pitmilly houses. And there is a Pitmilly House book. And if Morton and Pitmilly used to have like the King's Grain would be like made and stored and housed in there. They have like the old square. It looks like if an aerial view is like a picture frame where and one was a circle where the donkey would do the mill, and there was a courtyard inside, and they had a main house for it called the Pitmilly House, but it turned out they had to tear it down because it was so haunted and had all this poltergeist, like crazy things happening through it. And so that's the only connection. If you search Pitmilly House, it's going to come up. The other Pitmilly House.
Yeah, it's unique though. I just because it's going to make people ask questions. So it's Pitmilly now. I guess it's the design solutions. Would you say or interior solutions?
Interior solutions, I guess, because it's just I like to go into someone's house and like I'll charge a design fee. I go in and I'll go to measure, but I ask everyone never to clean like their space because I want to find a space for every single thing laying on that floor. As a mom, I know my kids are never going to shoot. And I tell people, I'm like, they want these beautiful things. And I'm like the worst person because I'm like, listen, I could build this to you, but they're not going to use it. Mm-hmm. They're not. And I have this one woman who sends me videos still. She's like, oh, you're right. Look at this beautiful shoe thing. And it's just everything's everywhere.
I just texted my buddy. I said, you still have church benches and all available to take from Bethany? He said, yes, take as many as you want.
Oh, my God.
So you let me know.
The van up at the,
I'll
yes,
get you
let me know.
Down there. You take whatever you want.
That is, that is the kindest thing ever. Thank you so much.
That's what he does around here. But so tell us your Instagram, I guess, your number, website, wherever our guests can kind of pop it up on the screen. That way they can find your work, because I know we're going to get a ton of calls and texts and emails about this.
And what is your average, like what's your normal client look like? Like, is it just Lafayette Hill, single family home, or is it like is it a mansion in Villanova, or is it a row home in Conshohocken?
So it's really all of those.
Okay.
I just do smaller jobs, like the jobs that, when you were like running and doing like your crew that you wouldn't take because it wasn't worth it. Like it's worth my time because I could do that. I don't want to overdo and say like I don't do kitchens.
Okay.
But I'll do in a kitchen if you need like, your
Extra
workspace.
stuff.
Yeah. If you want an island, like all that type
Mud
of stuff.
room, custom mud rooms, custom laundry rooms.
And I'll do like, I'll build mantles and like I've just built them before and people have just installed
Wainscoting,
them.
stuff like that.
Paneling. Mud
Board
rooms,
and batten
laundry rooms.
stuff.
Yeah, bedrooms. I've done a lot of offices. There was a bedroom that I just did where I had that vaulted ceiling when you walked in, and then it was like a flat ceiling, and so there was a divide, but there was no walls. So I built like all cabinetry for base.
You doing like tray ceilings or anything for anybody?
I haven't done them, but I'm dying to do them as long as it doesn't need scaffolding because I don't have any.
Exposed beams.
Yes.
All right. Now I saw a lot of stuff on your Instagram. So where can people get a hold of you? Let us know what that is. We'll put it up on the screen, and how you want to be contacted. Email, phone number, website, Instagram.
Yeah, email is my best thing.
Okay.
So it's kbrien, Brien, @pitmillyhouse.com. And then my Instagram, I really like using my Instagram. It linked to Facebook. So if you don't have Instagram, you could use Facebook. But I really prefer that. I do have a website that I'm kind of like, I got it because I had a painter at one point.
Nobody goes on websites much anymore. It's all Instagram.
I know, and that's what I am.
Great.
I'm kind of doing. I'm gonna open that up so I could do design consults like virtual because there's a lot of people. Like I helped this one woman from Ireland build her. She wanted one of those secret things, so I did a design. Like we were just going back and forth, and I was like, there's so many people. I have a lot of followers in the UK that are like, how do you do this? So
is that because of the name, the Pitmilly House?
It might be. I have no
followers?
idea.
Yeah.
Like I think it's really cool when you get someone from like afar. They're like, oh, or I think the biggest compliment was it's just people who are in the business that are like incredible, and they're like, how did you do that? And I'm like, you're asking.
I like it because I got like lost on your Instagram page because I do like so much of just the same stuff over and over again. It's just 5 1/4 sanitary trim, sanitary case, 3 1/4 case, shoe molding, the same oak hardwood floors all the time, the same cabinets. So it's like it's just very repetitive for me at this point. So I got to see a lot of stuff, and it's like, oh, this is the cool stuff. That's the type of shit that I miss doing. Yeah. But at the same point, I don't.
I know. It's because it's a lot of work. Like I'll start a job, and then if it goes on past a month, I'm like, oh my God, I just want to be done. Like this, and the homeowners are like, me too.
Oh, they want you out of there too. Yeah.
Well, it's exciting because it's refreshing. One, again, we just all met one another, and you're our neighbor in business and neighbor in the community. So it's really cool to see you get super geeked up when you talk about like different projects. You get like hyped up about it. Yeah. And Nick, to his point, he says like his stuff, he does repetitive stuff. His business model obviously successful, but it's great to hear a couple different, sides of it because that finish work stuff, right? Like the consumer always sees, hey, like this is the expensive part. But to your point, it's like, this is what you look at every day. This is what you're going to be looking at every day. So
it's the one thing you can't hide it. It's got to be perfect. Like that's the thing about finish. I could hide all the stuff behind it for you.
But you're adding a lot of custom value to homes, and livability is what you're adding. And it's kind of like my wife will say like, yeah, you can go to Kohl's and buy a purse, but I want that Gucci purse that's going to last me for a while, and it's going to be awesome, and it's worth money. It's built right. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's how she sells them to me. But it's the truth. You get what you pay for.
But it's quality. That's what I tell my husband all the time because he's like, you have the most expensive taste, and I'm like, but it's gonna last.
Yeah, you're using Festool. You're using Festool.
Yeah.
You have no idea what we're even talking about.
I have no idea. That's
it's
why
basically
I was quiet
like you could go drive a Honda. She's driving like the most custom BMW made right now. You know what I mean? Like those tools are awesome. They last. And when they get stolen, it's a fucking heartbreak. Or when they break, it sucks.
It really, really.
They're hard to break, those tools, though.
I know.
Those things are built
except for the track saw.
Well, if you give it to a 15-year-old,
yeah,
they can break
don't
anything.
let them touch your tracks. But yeah, there's definitely it's a treat. I've been really blessed and lucky.
Well, I'm glad that you responded.
Thanks for coming on out of nowhere, because
and
it's like a lot of times it's people through business that we've worked with in the past, and you know have came on and just shared your story, which is super inspiring. I know for a lot of people that are new in business, definitely women in business for sure, because it's an intimidating space for a guy like me. I wouldn't even know the first thing in your world. So
it's intimidating, but you got to get over yourself. And that's the hardest thing is like I'm having, like I've gotten rattled. I have definitely gotten rattled by people. And I've had those moments where I'm like, okay, we're not going to do that one again. But it's just like anything. I think textile taught me the best being a fashion designer, because you got critiqued by teachers and you were exhausted. You didn't sleep, and they would rip everything, all your hard work apart. And I learned a thick skin. I learned to be like, all right, so that's what you think. That's okay. But you got to remember you could pick yourself back up. You just can't.
Well, I've been on job sites since I was a child and around construction my entire life. And I have to say that I'm wildly impressed by the shit that you're doing. Yeah. Like seeing it on Instagram is fucking cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Really neat. I love kind of that mindset, that failure mindset, right? Like we embrace that around here, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you fail. That's part of business. It's part of that moving on.
Yeah.
I would suck it. We know how that feels when you work your ass off on something, you get to the end and you kind of get trashed.
Yeah.
Right. So no, it's awesome. We're going to be looking forward to your work. We're going to share a lot of your work. And we can't wait for our viewers to check out the Pitmilly House. So,
thanks for having me, guys.
Kiersten, so awesome for coming on again for Nick Cessna, Ryan Dolan, another episode of the Atomic Real Estate Show. We will see you guys later. Thanks.
If you enjoyed our episode, please consider supporting the show by rating and reviewing the podcast. Also, check us out on Instagram at Atomic Real Estate Show to find out when new shows drop and to participate in our community Q&As. The Atomic Real Estate Show was brought to you by Direct Subs. Direct Subs is the #1 place for real estate investors to connect with local contractors for their flips, rentals, renovations, and new construction projects.